Welcome to the latest edition of Dynamic Political Centrism, hosted by Alan Steinberg, produced by Dr. Yonatan Yoni Yaris.
Our guest tonight, Laura Jones, esteemed journalist and debate moderator.
Good evening and welcome to the voice of dynamic political centrism. I am Alan Steinberg, that voice, and tonight we have an all-star show with the woman who is the gold standard of talk television, political talk television in New Jersey. She's also a marvelous person. I'll get to that in a minute. But here with us tonight, live from Jacksonville, Florida, is Laura Jones. She's allowed to travel out of state, and I'm glad she made time for us while she's visiting her family, spending time with her daughter, who I hope to have on the show, actually, seriously, as a future great talent from New Jersey. And we'll give her the show. Laura, you and I can do that show together.
I love it. That's the deal. Alan, it
serious.
is my pleasure. I make myself available. It's always so nice to talk to you. And yes, deal that we'll book my daughter on the show together. Deal.
All right. I look forward to that very much. Let me tell our listeners about Laura Jones, because she has an historic place in New Jersey talk television. Again, I have two personal thanks I have to extend to her as well. I remember when Laura first came on New Jersey Power and Politics with Jim McQueenie. It was the first time Michael Aaron for many years, and he's the ultimate dean of New Jersey journalism. He's a person I love dearly, and his passing marked the passing of a legend. Michael had a show basically all of his own, and it was very good. It was the top quality. What Laura Jones and Jim McQueenie introduced was more of a personal outreach to the guests. They would talk to the guests together, and they would not only talk about the politics of the guests, they would talk about the guests' outlook on matters. What was his personal concerns or her personal concerns. And I found myself really loving that show. I believe it started in 1999. Is that correct?
Yep.
It
did. It actually started at, yeah, you're correct. It started as Campaign 2000, and it was a one-off leading up to the election. At that time, we had Bill Bradley running for president in the presidential primary. So they had me out on the road. I was the Trenton bureau chief, and I was covering a lot of politics, but it became more and more obvious that we needed a show to really dive deeper into the issues and to talk to the candidates. As you said, Michael Aaron on the record, his show was amazing. What we always tried to do is Jim McQueenie, my co-host, he knew all of the policies. He worked for Frank Lautenberg at one point. So he knew so much of the real nitty gritty. And I tried to make it as relatable as I could to the audience, because as a rookie reporter, when I was first starting out at the Trenton Bureau, I was intimidated as being a state house reporter. I really didn't know politics all that well, but a lot of people took me under their wing, and I realized, hold on, this affects everybody. And if you just make it in a conversational way that's easy to understand, it made me really excited about politics and sharing stories. And then as somebody working in Trenton, I was always taken by the story behind the story. You would get headlines because, New Jersey, we're wedged in between the New York market and the Philadelphia market. And what, I loved, and a lot of times, they come in with their headlines, but they don't always get the story right, or they don't understand really how a law came into being, or all of the players. So Campaign 2000 evolved into power and politics, because it wasn't just about politics, it was about the power players behind it. So that's kind of how it evolved, Alan.
Well, that is a marvelous introduction to what was a key chapter in your life. And you were on Power and Politics for many years. It was News 12 Power and Politics. And I remember when you first came on the scene, because you and Jim were an ideal combination. As you said, he knew all the matters, he knew all the personalities, but you brought a relatability to that show that was just marvelous. I felt as if Laura and Jim were in my living room watching the show with me, and that's a hard thing to do. And it was magnificent. Now, I had a historic moment on that show for me personally, and it was when I first was invited as a guest. I had left Region 2 EPA. I was getting started in political journalism, And you and Jim had me on at the beginning of the 2009 gubernatorial campaign. And I was on several times, and I just really enjoyed going on because your level of preparation was outstanding. I had a more difficult time going on the show with journalists, not that particular show, but other shows, talk radio shows as well, with journalists who really weren't that prepared. But I knew that whatever issue we would talk about, Laura and Jim were going to be prepared. And what I found remarkable about you is, for Jim and myself, I'll include myself, we had long careers politically in the State House. So you kind of absorb all this just by being there. There's something about New Jersey politics, in my view, that you get credit just for showing up. I have friends in other states.
Yes.
You really get credit it's like what Woody Allen used to say. You get credit just for showing up. I have friends in other states, New York, Pennsylvania, and they're amazed when they talk to me and they ask about a certain person. And like you, like me, we know everybody. New Jersey is a small town state, not in terms of it's an urban state too, but it has the atmosphere of a small community. So it's easy to get to know everybody. And it was nothing peculiar to me. It was nothing particular to me that I knew all these people. That was New Jersey. You just got credit for showing up. And in your case, in short order, you knew everybody. I was amazed when I would come on the show. I'll use a sports analogy because I'm a baseball freak. You're like a person who started going to shows and all of a sudden knew Shohei Ohtani in person. That's what you were like.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And that's the beauty of doing what I do is, I was a State House reporter. I was living it, working it. I thought about it. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the people I work with. I enjoyed the politicians. And again, seeing the dynamics behind the scenes, I wanted to share that with people. It's almost like, talking to a friend or a family member. Oh, I've got to tell you, you're not going to believe what happened in Trenton. And yeah, this is the headline, but here's what was really going on. You should have seen this person behind the scenes, man. They were really working to try and get this done. And such over here, they knew that they had this person and they used that power to kind of flip things around and get something accomplished they wanted to accomplish. So again, I always enjoyed it. And still to this day, it doesn't really feel like work. But I do work very hard to try and think issues through so I can ensure the audience is understanding this is what this means. And I never want people to feel like they don't understand or that something is too difficult. So I don't dumb it down for the audience by any means, but I'm not afraid to stop somebody while they're talking if they throw out an acronym. If you throw it out EPA, I might say Environmental Protection Agency. You want the audience to feel like, oh yeah, it's okay not to know everything, and to wait a minute, hold on, did I not know that? Oh wait, what did they say? So I try and keep that perspective, think it through before I go on the air to try and anticipate what's too inside, what do I need to explain out a little bit more, and what's that that's why I should care factor that makes the audience want to come back and be engaged in politics. And there was I won't go on too long about this, but
this is fantastic. Keep going.
One of the news anchors, Della Cruz at News 12 New Jersey, she had just started, and I was at the campaign. I was at the Democratic National Convention in 2000 with McQueenie on the floor, and it was one of her first days, and she tossed a live shot to me. And I talked to her in a conversational tone. Now, Della is, an award-winning, anchor. Everybody knows her, loves her. And she was a little intimidated by politics. She's like, Laura, you're making this fun. You're making this enjoyable. And man, that just lit me up. And then she lit up, and it was just this great energy. So I love getting that kind of feedback when people say, oh, now I understand. Now I get it. Oh, wow, that was actually kind of fun to talk about. So there was a spark there. And I love when I'm able to make those connections, no matter who it's with, a news anchor, audience member, a politician. And, a lot of the politicians who I interview, elected officials, they're nervous or they're wondering, how did I do? Did that sound okay? They want my feedback, which sometimes amazes me.
I was amazed by you, and I'll tell you why. You and I have something in common. Neither one of us is a native New Jerseyan.
Right.
And we came to New Jersey and you end up loving the politics. You end up being absorbed by it. You
Do.
know, I'll tell you something. I went to synagogue Saturday, and the weather's nicer now, so it's easier for me to go. And I don't drive on the Sabbath; I walk. Well, you know a lot about Judaism too. I discovered that about you. You could be
Yes.
the first woman rabbi who was on. You could be on News 12 as a woman rabbi, but I was always amazed by what you knew. But the rabbi, he gets on my podcast. He's just a wonderful man. He said, "But Alan, the politics is too much a part of you. There's other aspects of you." I said, "Yes, but Rabbi, if you get into this stuff, it really it doesn't become an addiction. It becomes a real compulsion because you can do a lot of good. You have done a lot of good as a journalist by exposing stories, by explaining to the audience. And neither one of us is originally from New Jersey, but I think that's what makes New Jersey politics unique. I've lived in other states, but it doesn't have the same grip as New Jersey politics because you and I know all the people. It's incredible.
That's it, right? It really feels like a family in many ways, and it's interesting to see how it's almost like a soap opera, right? If you step away from
Yes.
it for a little while and then you come back, it's like, wait a minute, some of the lead characters will change, but they don't always go away. And that can
They
even be
never
like,
go away, a lot of them.
no, just when they're out, you think you're out, they pull you back in.
That's
Godfather.
just when I
Exactly.
think they're out there. And I'm a Godfather freak.
Yes.
So you really hit home with me on that one.
Oh,
Talk about
definitely.
having fun.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but that is so. I'll give you a quick story that shows how you never leave. I've heard that Sharp James recently is ill. I hope he recovers because I don't excuse the conduct of which he was convicted, but he was a tragedy. He could have been one of the greatest urban mayors. He got a lot accomplished. He had very good staff, and he was a real character to deal with. He was a
Yeah.
New Jersey original. But a friend of mine went to an NCAA playoff game a few years ago, and it was over at the Rock in Newark, the Prudential Center. And he walks in, and he sees Sharp James. He goes, "Mr. Mayor, it's great to have you back." And he goes, "I never left." And that is
Right.
New Jersey.
That's so Jersey. That's so Jersey. I remember when Whitney Houston passed away, Newark girl herself, and I was in the newsroom, and I'm gonna go talk to Sharp James, and I think he had already completed his sentence at that point. I'm not clear on my timeline, but they're thinking you're not going to get Sharp James to talk to you.
Oh, you would.
Watch me.
If there's anybody who could have gotten Sharp James, he would have said, "Miss Jones, I'm going to be over."
And he did, and he did, and he happily talked about Whitney Houston. No apologies. He was Sharp James. What else can you say?
He was a New Jersey original, but I've got to give you two compliments, otherwise I would be negligent. Number one, and this affects me as a grandparent now. I do a lot of babysitting. Uh, you're a marvelous mother, and I don't know how. I read your Facebook page just to see what your kids are doing. Okay,
Yes.
but I don't know how you find enough hours in a day to do that. I mean, how do you? I mean, your Facebook page is one of the most entertaining Facebook pages on the whole site.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, how do I do it? One step at a time. I try not to, well, yeah, well, 1 minute, 1 minute, one step at a time. How, being in the New Jersey political scene, and again, because it is so much a part of your life and it's a part of your conversation, it's a part of your circles, maybe that makes it a little easier, to be able to balance that. And then, with my show that I've been able to do, I've actually been able to walk away and do some freelance work to where I'm not having to do the 9 to 5 every single day as a beat reporter. And, when my kids need the priority, my kids take priority. But, you just try and do things one step at a time. And I think that being a reporter actually prepared me to be a better mother because my children do have challenges, and I've had to be their advocate for them. And because of my job as a reporter and learning how to navigate through all those layers of red tape, I think that's made me a better parent. So actually working sometimes gives me a break from being a mom sometimes, but it's in a positive way. It makes me a better mother because I will be out there and, I'll be talking to somebody from the Department of Education, and then I'll try and understand not how it works just to benefit myself and my children, but, the advocacy work that I do, I want other people to learn and to understand and to know they're not alone if they're going through a difficult journey, especially educationally, if they have special ed children, challenges like that. So I try and use those opportunities to learn about whatever issues it is that I'm dealing with to navigate the system. And then I often will report, or even on Facebook, it's telling stories, taking pictures. It's a little bit of therapy to,
You're an inspiration.
Oh, thank
And
you.
I'll tell you
Thank
something
you.
I'll tell you something you didn't know. I feel like I'm at parents' night. My producer, Dr. Yonatan Yaris, just had his 7th child. So when I have 2 really good parents on the show, this is parents' night.
Yes, I love it. I love it. Wow, 7. I have 3. And I have 20-year-old, a 18-year-old, and a 17-year-old. And my 17-year-old just got his driver's license. My 18-year-old, I won't embarrass him, just got another college acceptance today. And my 20-year-old daughter is doing auditions for summer stock. So it's a good day. And
Yeah, but I'm really intrigued with your daughter because I have been following all the stuff you put on, and being an aficionado of singing and entertainment, I've got to go. My lady friend Garnet, I'm going to make her come in and see it with me. This is Laura Jones Celebrity. But I have to give you a personal thank you for something else, okay? And it is personal, but I think I express the feelings of a lot of people. For New Jersey Jews, this has been a very tough year. And it has been ever since October 7th, the slaughter and the kidnapping by Hamas of Jewish residents of the state of Israel, also people who were touring the state of Israel. There are nights I don't get any sleep. We took my granddaughter to the Israel Day Parade. When she saw the movement, the tribute to the hostages, she started crying. So you sensed this ache. You grew up with Jewish people, but you sensed this ache. You were so sensitive, and you had a number of shows on Israel. I was delighted to come on some of those shows and express the feeling. And I think you showed a sensitivity that often journalists don't have. So I want to thank you for that.
Oh, I'm happy to. My great-grandfather was Jewish, and throughout high school, I babysat for an Orthodox rabbi here in Jacksonville, again, where I am right now at that time synagogue. And right out of college, my first job was director of a daycare because on the Sabbath, they needed somebody who wasn't Jewish in order to be able to lock the doors and to do other things.
Oh, you could do that great.
But the Jewish community in Jacksonville, they embraced me. They were absolutely wonderful. And you know what I found so fascinating growing up, I grew up Southern Baptist, is realizing how similar Judeo-Christian beliefs are. And one of the things that always talked about, as somebody growing up Christian is, there's no greater ally than the Jewish people. So having worked around the community, I felt always very, very close. And the rabbi Yitzhak Adler, I believe, is up in Connecticut now. He was always just very, very good to me.
You pronounced his name perfectly, which is not usual for someone who isn't Jewish.
There you go. See?
But I'll tell you, you said you grew up as a Southern Baptist. Well, one of the great Baptists was Harry Truman, who recognized the existence of the state of Israel on May 14th, 1948. So I know 2 great Baptists who are friends of the Jewish people, and I thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
I'd like to go through a few of your biographical items because I think you can be an inspiration to somebody who is out there watching our podcast and wondering, how do you get into journalism? What is it what steps do you have to take? So tell us a little bit about how Laura Lindsay Jones, see your Facebook page. I would never know your single name unless I looked at Facebook.
That's right.
But tell us how you got the inspiration to go into journalism and what steps you took and how you got to where you are.
Yeah, I went to Florida State University and I thought I wanted to be a reporter when I went into Florida State. But my freshman year, when I went with my academic advisor, he gave me a little assessment and he was like, "Oh, this is in the 80s." He's like, "No, you don't want to be a reporter. That's too hard. You should go be a model." And I remember being heartbroken and going back to my roommate. I'm crying. I'm thinking, well, I wanted to be a reporter, and who is this? But he's an advisor. He's the dean of, he's a dean. He must know something I don't know. So for the next couple of years, I was trying out different things. What do I want to study? Psychology, education. Ultimately, I settled on communications. And because it was a broader category. So there was some film, there was some journalism, there's advertising, public relations. And then I graduated, and then I was working in retail for a few years. Well, first I worked for the Orthodox synagogue as a daycare director. Then I was working in retail, and I was just miserable. Eventually, in 1993, when I moved up to this area from Jacksonville, Florida, up to Washington Crossing, Pennsylvania, I woke up one morning and I said, you know what? I wanted to be a reporter. And that college advisor sidetracked that. So I turned on the television. I started writing down every single TV station that was in the area. And that was on a Sunday. Then the next day, I started calling everyone to see if there was any opening entry-level positions. I was 25 years old, and there weren't until I finally got to NJN. PBS, and they said, we don't have any entry-level positions. We don't have any internships. We have internships, but you're not in college anymore. But if you want to come volunteer, go ahead. Come on down. So I did. I seized that. And I worked for State of the Arts for a while, behind the scenes, and then I was a desk assistant for New Jersey Network. And I remember when Christy Whitman was being sworn into office. That was one of my first days working the desk at New Jersey Network. I remember seeing Michael Aaron, the dean of New Jersey Press Corps,
Yes.
out there, and he was, interviewing. He knew everybody. And there was myself and one other person in the newsroom. Everybody else at NJN was at the War Memorial for Christy Whitman's swearing in. Um, and I just thought, oh my gosh, wow, look at him. I can't imagine ever being able to do that. Well, a few weeks, maybe a couple months at most later, somebody from a low power TV station, WZBN, came in to do a story on Michael Aaron because he had written a book on the Jim Florio, Christy
I
Whitman.
have that book over in my
Yes,
shelves right here.
yes, right.
Governor's Race, it's called.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. And I went up and I talked to the reporter and the photographer, Greg Zanoni was his name, happened to be the station owner of WZBN. To make a very long story short, he said, we would like to hire a reporter. Come on in, pitch me a story. Let's see what you can do. And I did. I did a story in Princeton. It was the movie IQ with Meg Ryan and Walter.
Yes.
Right. And I did a story on that. He's like, okay, well, you know what? If you come to me with more story ideas, we'll pay you 25. So, man, I just started cranking out the stories, and eventually loved storytelling. And I was a little intimidated by not knowing things, but I realized that's where my strength is admitting I don't know things, but I know how to ask questions and I know how to find information and then I know how to put it together. So that's how, my journey came about.
Yeah, but I'm amazed
And
at something. If I can just interrupt you for this.
please do.
You have a knack for politics, which I don't fully understand. You have a marvelous knack for it. You didn't major in political science. It doesn't seem like politics. Look, I was obsessed with politics when my grandfather gave me 34 coins of all the presidents, and my mother hated Nixon. That was the other thing. He'd come on TV. She couldn't stand him. I thought he was okay,
funny.
but she was right. Exactly what it was like, because I would go, for example, to the Roebling pub. It was a nice restaurant pub, but the characters that would come in there were unbelievable. And I got to schmooze with these people. I liked them. I couldn't help it. Washington was different. Washington, D.C., I spent a lot of time there when I was regional administrator, Region 2 EPA. You had some of that camaraderie, but in the Gingrich era, the polarization, and Clinton, it became very polarized. And unfortunately, I get the feeling that Trenton is that way now. And I regret that, because we used to be able to bust each other's chops. You know, the Democrats and Republicans would kid each other. There was dating among the various people and of each side, and it was really down to earth fun. And you know, as long as you didn't kept your drinking within bounds, you know.
Yes.
But it was. We used to go to Jamie's, and we had games between the Democrat and Republican baseball teams. Unfortunately, you put your finger on it. That's gone now, and that's something I'm sad about. But,
Oh, I know. I agree.
speaking of disagreement and debate, you have become the gold standard also of moderators. You know, moderators for moderators of debate, and you exhibit two things. Number one, you exhibit the talent for controlling the situation. And the second thing you would exhibit is a knowledge of the questions. Your questions of the candidates have been absolutely outstanding. Now, I want to go through, and given the constraints of time, I want to go through each debate. I'll basically try to summarize it like this. In the Democrat debate, was there anything that stood out to you in terms of the performance of the individual debater? Same thing with the Republican. I'm curious as to where you were sitting, what your intuitions were, what your feelings were, and how you received all this. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So what struck me, there was a lot of prep work ahead of time, and I was moderator along with David Wildstein of the New Jersey Globe and Mike Rasmussen of the Rovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University. It's a mouthful. But right, like I always want to make sure I do as much research and preparation as possible. One of the things that we practiced and we were prepared for was the fighting. We were anticipating with 6 Democratic candidates, man, sparks could fly. How are we control of the conversation, and how are we going to ensure that they don't have like a runaway, that they don't get the upper hand? So we were practicing that. What really struck me during this debate was they were respectful of each other. We had rules. If someone is attacked, then your opponent gets 30 seconds to rebut. I didn't have to do that once in the Democratic debate. What struck me first and foremost was Steve Sweeney, former Senate president, and Newark Mayor Ras Baraka. They were so respectful, and they were they disagreed, but they were like oh yeah, no, you go ahead. Oh, no, after you. Like they were genuinely kind and respectful to each other. And I thought that Ras Baraka and Steve Sweeney, and that's the feedback I got too. They came across as so genuine and like very likable. And a lot of people, this was their first glimpse at the candidates. You know, the insiders, we know who these people are. We know who the former Senate president is, Steve Sweeney, but our viewers, they don't know that. Some of them do, some of them don't. And, Ras Baraka, liberal, progressive, Democrat, he came across very, very likable, again, with Steve Sweeney. Steve Fulop, incredibly knowledgeable, mayor of Jersey City. Sean Spiller, NJEA president. He was very, very, very well spoken. And then we have our 2 sitting members of Congress, Mikey Sherrill and Josh Gottheimer, and they spoke the least amount, which surprised me. We were keeping totals of how much everybody spoke, and Ras Baraka and Steve Sweeney, they spoke the most, and Josh Gottheimer and Mikey Sherrill spoke the least. And again, people weren't stepping on each other. They were respectful. There were no attacks, and we got to a lot more questions in the Democratic debate than we did the Republican side, because they stuck to their time limits. They weren't attacking each other, and they were being respectful of myself and the panelist. And I didn't have to, I have a bell. I don't have it. My bell is back in New Jersey. And yes. So,
we'll have you on another show. You can ring the bell.
I'm not afraid to use the bell.
Okay.
The funny story behind that, but but I didn't have to use the bell because they were respectful. So that's really what struck me. Steve Sweeney, Ras Baraka, very respectful of each other, came across as very likable, and I thought they, if you had to have winners and losers, like they really were able to touch on and speak to the people. But again, I've talked to Steve Fulop since then, and also Sean. It's really really very, very respectful, knowledgeable, And everybody had a strategy coming into it. They wanted to get their sound bites. So that's, again, we were ready for World War III for the Democrats. That didn't happen. The Republicans, though, ooh, oh
Yes.
my.
Go ahead. You gave a great
Yes.
summary of the Democrats. I want to hear your
Yeah.
Republican summary.
So on the Republican side, right, we have Bill Spadia, Jack Ciattarelli, Edward Durr, and John Bramnick. So we have the opening statements. And it was a random draw. And Jack Ciattarelli, who this is his third time running for governor, actually, and to many would be considered the front runner because he's done this. He has the name recognition. He called out Bill Spadia and John Bramnick. Bill Spadia, former host of New Jersey 101.5, John Bramnick, a state senator, and he called them out in the speech, in the opening statements. And two things strikes me about that. One, going back to my communications degree between, and advertising 101, when you're number one, if you're Coke, you're not mentioning Pepsi. You're not mentioning, any of the other competition. So the fact that you have Jack Ciattarelli going out in his opening statement and even acknowledging Bill Spadia and John Bramnick, that surprised me. And man, John Bramnick's like, I want a rebuttal. He attacked me. So I'm immediately getting my bell up saying, guys, no, you don't get rebuttals on an opening. And then from there, it just spiraled. And
but you never lost control, though.
Thank you. I thank you, because at times I was wondering how it was coming across to the audience, because as somebody who has not only moderated, but watched a lot of debates, I can't stand when moderators are so strict that you don't let people actually finish their sentences. Like if it's a minute and I can tell they're wrapping it up, I'm going to give them a minute 5, a minute 10, as long as they're wrapping it up. I wanted, and I think it's important that the audience sees certain things unfold. All right, who's saying what? How are they unfolding? But many times I just had to step in and say, okay, we're moving on to the next subject. Otherwise, we're never, because that was part of their strategy, is everybody's attacking one another. And then at one point, the way it was a random draw, I think Bill Spadia got under Jack Ciattarelli's skin.
He's been getting under his skin for a long time.
Jack Ciattarelli seemed to be playing more defense than I was expecting. And Bill Spadia at one point, because Jack Ciattarelli was saying, well, phony Bill or something like that. And Bill Spadia just kind of leaned into it and used his years as a radio live morning show anchor, talk show host, just kind of leaned into it. He's like, what's the website once again? Like he actually kind of embraced it, which was smart to do. Instead of fighting or saying, I'm going to rebut that, he just kind of, leaned into it. But everybody wanted to have, everybody was mentioning somebody else in every answer. It was almost an attack. And we had one break during it where we're like, okay, listen, we need to make sure we have a certain amount of questions. And as moderators and questioners, we always have, these are the topics we want to get to that aren't negotiable. Other things, again, things are at my discretion. So I will let them go back and forth because I think it's important for audience to see that. But, I've got to rein it in at a certain point, because what I'm seeing there in person isn't always translating to a television audience. The way the microphones are picking it up, you can't always see. And people, sometimes the candidates might think, oh, well, this is, I'm going to look like I'm aggressive and not letting things slide. It doesn't always play on TV. So all of these things are going through my mind. What am I doing as a moderator? How are we playing to the audience here? How is this playing to the audience who's watching on television? Can they pull these out for sound bites? And, and I'm paying attention to the production. So there's a lot going on.
But the control that you maintained enabled the public to get maximum disclosure of what these candidates believe and what their plans are if they're elected, because otherwise it would have turned into a shouting match. But I have an ironic view of the debates, a positive view, but it surprises people.
Oh, what's
the
that?
Democrat debate was a model of civility, even with all the differences. I think their primary is going to be nasty. I think that their primary is going to be nothing like the debate. There's a lot at stake. The Democrats are very divided and ideologically, very divided with their progressive wing. You could see that in the debate. Ras Baraka had a tremendous night. He really did. No one expected. He came out of that debate a star, and And Sweeney demonstrated to the public why he's gubernatorial. So no one had a bad night, put it that way, on the Democratic side.
Right.
But there are deep divisions, maybe not so personal, but between the progressives, between the centrists, a number of very divisive issues. New Jersey is a state of clashing ethnic groups, and I think it's going to be a tough primary. The Republican side, that was a nasty night, but the public at this point, I think, sort of knows what the candidates are all about. And, Chitterelli has worked this very hard. Spady has too, but Chitterelli is out there. He's on the same Instagram site that my family is on. Jack has taken a picture, I think, of almost every single person in New Jersey. He's out there every single night. And, but I think that a lot of the passion of the campaign got spent in that debate. And not that it isn't going to be hotly contested, but I think the more difficult primary is going to be on the Democrats. I could be wrong. It's just a gut feeling I have.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really interesting because, when you look at the trends, and Donald Trump did really well in New Jersey. Joe Biden still won New Jersey, but Donald Trump did well. But just because New Jersey might be a little more purple presidential, that doesn't necessarily translate to what's happening at the state level in the race for governor. But when you kind of look back, it goes back and forth between Democrat, Republican. We've been going 8 years with Phil Murphy. So I think the Republicans are in a pretty good position.
I do too.
It's almost the Democrats to lose. And you would think after, Joe Biden lost the presidential race that I thought that, maybe they would look at coming together and not beating each other up too much because, in a primary, you've got to win a primary, right? But you don't want to beat up your competition so much so that you come out bloodied and, not able to win the general. So, but I think that's really interesting. I think you might be right. I could see that because
I see one big thing that is emerging, one big aspect.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a Republican, and I'm no longer a Republican, so I'm giving you a very analytical view. I think this is a Republican year to win. I think there is a little bit of not so much boredom, but the public is not so enthused. When the party's been in power a long time, 8 years, I think the public is ready for a change, and that favors the Republicans. However, this is a tremendously anti-Donald Trump state. Now, in the case of Chitterelli, he's the likely Republican nominee, I believe. And at the same time, he's a very good campaigner. He has a comprehensive knowledge of all the issues. He leads all the candidates in both parties in terms of state government experience. He's right out of central casting. But he made the decision 4 years ago, and I, as a result of which, I had a pretty good relation with him. It really distanced the two of us somewhat. He made the decision to become a backer of Donald Trump. And I think he made that decision because he felt he couldn't win otherwise. But the difficulty, as I see it, is now that he has this Trump identification, in New Jersey, look, the way Trump is going, by November of this year, he's going to be as popular as smallpox. I mean, he's really headed down Trump. I don't see it. This is the ultimate anti-Trump state, and including the ethnic minorities here who despise him. I don't know how Chitterelli's going to get around that. I'm not saying he can't, but that to me is the big mystery going into this campaign.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see because we asked them if I'm pretty sure we asked
them. You did ask them about something. Right.
And they all said that they would welcome Donald Trump into a campaign. But I think
except for Bramnick. Bramnick his anti-Trump is established.
Yeah. But I think that there's probably a way that they can separate themselves. Because it is Jersey to say, well, I can see them saying, well, we support the party, but here's what matters in New Jersey. So that's interesting. That'll be a great story to follow because we only have 2 governor's races to watch in this country, New Jersey and Virginia. Every other state is in even year. So we're 2025, so only really in 2 states who have a governor's election. So there will be a lot of attention on these races. And, Donald Trump has his golf course in Bedminster.
Yes, he does.
Come in. But what if Jack Ciattarelli doesn't win and it's Bill Spadea? Bill Spadea, I mean, Jack Ciattarelli has the most money. But Bill Spadea knows how to connect with people.
Yes, he does.
And he was like, when I had him on Power and Politics, the first time he was running for office, like nobody knew who he was. And to see how he's grown and how much has changed. And again, he has a definite presence. He, with the radio show, he was able to really, get a beat on what the people in New Jersey think.
Absolutely, he does.
With that. But it's all about money. Does he have enough money to win? And Jack Ciattarelli has, and not everybody knows New Jersey 101.5. In some parts of the state, they don't know him as well. But Jack Ciattarelli, yeah, like you said, he at this point, if it were held today, it looks like he's a little bit more favored. He has more money. He has more name recognition. But it's just how politicians go. They usually find a way to be able to separate themselves, I think. To say, well, yes, I said that, but this was kind of playing politics. I did what I had to say because I want to support our country. I want to support our president, the office, as opposed to the person. So I could see people getting around it that way.
Or our party, basically. Because
Right.
I think that's the challenge that Ciattarelli faces. I think. But I'll tell you what's funny is I knew Bill Spadea when he was a baby. I knew his father very well from politics.
Really?
So he's come a long way.
Oh, he has. Yeah.
I used to call his father on the phone, and Bill would answer, "Hello, who is this, please?" So I've known him for a long, long time. But it is gonna. I think that I want to make you. Well, I'm sure you already are aware of this. You're going to have an opportunity in this campaign. I'll tell you why. I think that these campaigns are being covered nationally. And there's a connection being made already with Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey and her fellow Congresswoman in Virginia, Abigail Spanberger, who looks like she's a heavy favorite to win the governorship of Virginia. So people are trying to connect the two. I don't say if it'll work or not, but I have a strong feeling that the national media, particularly national cable media like MSNBC and CNN, are going to be covering the races there. So if I get any people who call me, I'm going to say interview Laura Jones because
thank you.
No, you could really give the best synopsis. See, I have a tendency to be very wordy. You could give the Reader's Digest condensed version very well.
It depends on who I'm talking to as to how wordy I can be. When I have to be my 90 seconds TV version, Laura, I can get it down. But other times I just talk and talk for so long.
I want you on Morning Joe. I end up disagreeing with him a lot of times. I watch Morning Joe every day because I want to know what the zeitgeist is in Washington. So if you make it on Morning Joe, I would be very proud.
I have a funny story about that.
Go ahead.
Scarborough.
What a show this is.
2004. It is, we are in New Hampshire. It is not the primary. It's I get the primary. Yeah,
it's the primary. Yes.
Yeah, president's primary. It's January.
John Kerry. Yeah.
And I'm working for Comcast at the time, and we are in a bar afterwards. And I'm pregnant. I'm not drinking in the bar. I'm a month, maybe 2 months pregnant with my daughter Kate. And I see Joe Scarborough at the bar, and also in the bar was Chris Matthews, who was watching Saturday Night Live, and they were doing a skit on Chris Matthews. So I'm watching him, and everybody's staying at the same Holiday Inn in New Hampshire. My hotel room was right next to Peter Jennings. So I started talking to Joe Scarborough, and at the time he was Average Joe, not Morning Joe. I think he was doing Average, or he was doing a nighttime show. And he was looking for a reporter. So at the time, again, I was at Comcast. I got his number. I put a tape together. I sent it to him. And he was very interested in making me a reporter on his nightly show.
I wish he had hired you. That would have been
well,
fantastic.
maybe we send this to him and
We would have missed
I
you
can
in New
back on.
Jersey, but you would have been dynamite with Morning Joe.
Well, at the time, MSNBC had a hiring freeze, and then but he was very serious about it, or at least I thought he was. And then I had my daughter, and then I kind of, I had 3 babies in 3 years, so that never came to fruition. But I should reach out to him and let
You're
him.
darn right you should. You should send him the tape, remind him of who you are, because he
Yes.
loves connecting with different people in different states.
Yeah.
And you know the tundra of New Jersey very well, and this will be a covered primary election. It's one of the few in the nation.
Yeah,
So
right.
I hope someday that I will wake up in the morning and I will see my good friend Laura Jones on Morning Joe. And I do call him Morning Joe. Who's the guy who is really out of control? He's a very bitter conservative columnist. His oh geez, I forget his name. I'm having a
It'll come
memory
to
lapse.
us it'll come to us in the middle of the night. Oh, that's who I was talking about.
Yeah, he's on and he calls him Morning Schmo. He's
Oh,
a
okay.
bitter.
All right.
Yeah, but I watch Morning even when I don't agree with him. I watch him every day, and I watch the other reporters, Jonathan Lemire, Willie Geist, and I would love to see you on that show because you would fit like a glove.
Oh, thank you. I watch a little bit of everything. I watch all the channels, and that's when I
Right.
was first starting out. I loved watching and learning, and I think it's important to look at all sides. Sometimes when I'm speaking to people, it's just students, they'll ask about the biases in the media, and I'm like, some of the best reporting sometimes I will do when I get so into it, because every station has its own angle and its own slant. Sometimes I'll go to BBC, I'll go to Al Jazeera, I'll go to another outside news source. How are they reporting it? And then
Well, we have that opportunity now with cable. That's the
right.
advantage.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's kind of what that's what I will do myself.
Well, I hope you get on Morning Joe. Keep me advised of that because the morning it's on, I have to get up. I have to go to the other room. I watch Morning Joe every day anyway, but it's part of my routine. So I hope
we'll send him a clip and say, hey, what do you think?
absolutely.
And I'll bring you along with me. How about that?
Oh, I definitely would go. Look, I'm living in Highland Park. I go see my kids all the time, in New York. So I will definitely go. It'll be better than watching the New York Mets, which is my other New York. I have two passions in New York: the Mets, the baseball team, and the Met Opera. So between the two Mets,
yeah.
But now I can go to see you on Morning Joe. Laura, this has been a tremendous show. It really has been. It's been a pleasure, and you have so much to impart about the nature of media in New Jersey and where what it's like to have in the future. I have to say this: it's been a challenge for you in another sense. New Jersey is kind of a stepchild of the New York media, which I think is unfortunate because, except for Brian Thompson, who is a dear friend of mine. He's the only New York journalist who ever really got New Jersey, in my view. And that's a problem. And I think that not enough attention is paid to journalists like you who have walked the walk in New Jersey.
Yeah.
And I think it's, I think it's going to be a problem this year because it's going to be a heated gubernatorial race. So where exactly are you now? You're on Me TV sometimes. You're freelancing. Where's the best place to see Laura Jones? I'm not asking you to make a selection.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, you can watch. I'm on Me TV. I work for On New Jersey, ONNJ.com. It's a streaming service.
Right.
The show is on Me TV, WJLP on Saturday and Sunday mornings Saturday at 6:30 in the morning, Sundays at 8:30 in the morning. And you can always stream it online as well. You can follow me on all my social media, Laura Lindsay Jones and Laura Nancy Lindsay on Instagram. I'm there and I'm always accessible. If somebody messages me, I try and be as responsive as possible. That's where you find me. And I love hearing from viewers. I love hearing from organizations and other people, not just necessarily, somebody who's elected an official, groups, organizations, not-for-profits. I love just having conversations with people. You were talking about Brian Thompson, a former reporter for NBC, how he, connects those dots and how others connect those dots. I love being able to connect with people. And I love, being able to talk about anything New Jersey and anything related to my kids as well.
Well, Laura, you cover the whole waterfront, and
Thank
it was
you.
an honor for us to have you on. I will beg you to come on another time as well, because
Anytime.
you are so knowledgeable, and you really show the best in journalism. Folks
Alan.
out there, this has been a great night for the voice of political centrism. We try to forge solutions on the show. We try to have consensus. And when we have a guest like Laura Jones, we get to what is the very essence of good journalism. Laura, thank you so much, and all the best. And for your daughter, I look forward to seeing her over at either the Metropolitan Opera House or at Carnegie Hall. It's not too long of a walk for me to make, and it's healthy.
Thank you so much, Alan. It has been my pleasure. It was a great conversation, and it's always so wonderful to talk to you.
Great to talk to you. That concludes our show, ladies and gentlemen, and we will continue to try to bring you the very best in politics and journalism in New Jersey. Thank you to Laura Jones, and thank you to my producer, Dr. Yonatan Yaris. That concludes our show. Have a great week. We will have other shows later in the week, and baseball season's already almost here, so I'll be ready for the Mets. Take care, folks.
Thank you for joining us for the latest edition of Dynamic Political Centrism. Check back each week for our newest episodes, and you can catch past episodes online via YouTube and Spotify, and please subscribe to our Substack.